that I have a 26.5-pound house cat? The reason he's there, this is when he gets frustrated by the news. The reason he's there is because I don't talk about politics the whole time I'm talking about media literacy. I'm just talking about a few things. One, so that you can get a little bit better understanding of how we do what we do. Because part of the reason we've gotten to this point in our nation where you don't believe us and you don't believe journalists is because for decades we worked behind this cloak of secrecy. Just my name on the front page of the paper was supposed to be good enough. You didn't know anything about me. But Holly Zachariah wrote it, so it must be true. And those days are over. So I think the more we talk as journalists, the more people we can all get in front of to let you know how we do what we do and let you ask questions of what we do, better off we'll be. Also talk a little bit about being a smart consumer of the news. How do you get your news? Is it the best way to get the news? How do you know that what you're reading is true and accurate? And then in terms of my social media and my Twitter, let me just say, if anything ever gets me fired, it's gonna be my Twitter account. So anyway, my cat is here because inevitably, when I'm talking about media literacy and consuming the news, we get to politics. And so every time everybody gets a little worked up, I'm gonna show you a picture of Jinx. Because then we're all just gonna not talk about politics anymore. Does that make sense? So, I'm so much of what was said in introduction to the Speak Off is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. You know, the topic of the speech is mountains and molehills. And the reality of it is, everything is a mountain now. There are no molehills. Because everything, the minute I hit click on my tweet, or the minute our website posts a story, it's the shot heard round the world, and there's no going back. And so everything becomes a mountain. It used to be, and if anybody says, okay, boomer to me, I'm gonna make you leave. So, but I'm gonna talk about the old days a little bit. So it used to be, as a print journalist, I had 24 hours to get it right. So whenever our newspaper hit your doorstep in the afternoon, back when I started, and then the morning. So whatever happened on Monday, I had until noon on Tuesday to get it right. And I don't have that luxury anymore. And if you hear nothing else I say today, hear this. I'm 30 years in this business, which I won't talk about how old that makes Kathy Brooks. 30 years in this business, and I have never met a journalist anywhere who got up in the morning and said, I'm gonna screw this up today. Never. We make mistakes. And so, for example, I'm a crime reporter. Back when I had 24 hours to get it right, I'm standing at a crime scene and a guy in uniform who's a police officer says to me, Holly, you know what happened here, right? And he tells me, I had 24 hours to check and double check and look for other sources of information. And now, I ask a second source who's standing behind him, I'm like, is that true? And if it's yes, then I feel comfortable. I have no reason to believe that man in uniform is lying to me. So I send it back to the office and it becomes part of the story. He wasn't lying to me. At that moment, what he told me, he believed to be true. Half an hour later, they get new information. The story changes. We update our website. But you know what the people who tweet at me and email me and text me say? They don't say, thanks, Holly, for standing there in the rain for another 5 hours trying to get the truth. Why'd you lie to me in the first place? I didn't lie. What I had 5 hours ago was what we believed to be true. But in the age of information, it goes like this. Does any of that make sense? So I steal pretty much, I have no original thoughts. I steal them all. So Katie Couric a couple years ago did a documentary about the news. And she talked a lot about affirmation, not information. This is not rocket science. The way we consume our news and our information today, we're not looking for other ideas. We're looking for people who believe what we believe. The algorithms of Facebook and Twitter are set based on everything the world knows about you, and it's everything. Don't think they don't. To feed you the headlines and the information that you've already been interested in. I don't expect you to read a paper newspaper anymore. I hope you do, and I would encourage you to, but the reality is you're not. So if you're looking at my newspaper, the Columbus Dispatch, on your phone, unless you're clicking on what we call the digital edition, the e-edition, which still looks like a newspaper, it's just, you turn the page like you would a digital magazine. Unless you're looking at that, if you're just looking at my app and my website, you're still only seeing headlines, and you're picking and choosing what you need to see, what you're going to click on. As opposed to, when everyone read a newspaper, you saw things you weren't after. I call it going hunting. So I get made fun of at the Dispatch because I still use a real dictionary at my desk. And I use it all the time. And they laugh at me. So why can't you just highlight your word like everybody else in America and hit dictionary or thesaurus on your computer? Do you know why? Because if I highlight the word and I hit send, it's only going to give me that one word. But if I have to look it up in a dictionary, I have to find it on the page. And you know what? I might find a new word. I might learn something I didn't already know. And so that's how we should consume our news. Instead of just going looking for the one thing, we should pay attention to what's around it. For example, for the students in the room, I'm sorry that you have to stay through all of this for extra credit. It will be the most painful extra credit you've ever had to take. But my son grew up in a house, my son's 24. He grew up in a house where we read the news together every day. We watch the evening news, we watch the Today Show in the morning, and at 6 o'clock every night we watched NBC. Does he read a newspaper today? Does he watch a newscast today? Absolutely not. He could not have grown up in a more news-conscious house. But he'll hear something on the radio, or he'll overhear a conversation. He's in the Navy, active duty Navy. So he wants to know what's going on in the government. What does he do? He Googles whatever he heard a snippet of on the radio and does YouTube videos. One video comes up and he reads it and he thinks he's got all the information. Does that make sense? Once I get going, I don't stop. So if you have questions, just ask me. Are y'all awake? So let's talk about our biases. For those of you that were here during those 3 speeches, you heard that word a lot. Part of the degradation of the way the general population views journalism is our own fault. Because back when I was a young journalist, when pterodactyls flew around campus, they would say, you're not allowed to talk about, again, it's this cloak of secrecy, right? You don't talk about your opinions, you don't vote in partisan elections, you don't speak out at public events, even if you're there as a resident and not a journalist. No one can know that you have a beating heart and that you're human. Well, that's just dumb. nobody journalist stands in front of you, and again, I'm speaking as Holly Zachariah, a nobody journalist in Central Ohio. I am not speaking on behalf of my company, should they ever see this video. Just want to make that clear. But in my humble opinion, if a journalist stands in front of you and says to you that they are 100% objective and that they have no opinion on that, that's not true. It's just not true. What we have to do is recognize our biases. We have to recognize how we feel, make sure that what we're covering accurately and not seeing it. Whose speech had the glasses, the colored sunglasses? It's a great analogy. Fantastic. Make sure I'm not seeing it through my eyes, but I'm seeing it through theirs. I have a whole class I teach called Empathetic Reporter. I won't get into it because that's not what you're here for, but I'll just say this. As a crime reporter, if I'm in your life, you're having the worst day you've ever had. So it's really important to me to care about people as humans. That's what I do. I genuinely care about you. But the challenge of being an empathetic reporter is I need to make sure I'm not feeling their pain for them. And that I'm not, when I'm writing what they said or what they felt, that I'm not transferring my own perceptions of pain. So what does any of this mean? A couple years ago in Columbus, we had a horrible accident at the Ohio State Fair where a ride blew apart and several people were injured and one teen was killed instantly. I run our internship program at the Dispatch. So I work to mentor our interns. This was summer. Our interns, I'm so proud of them. They did the bulk of this coverage for us. Long story short, the next morning, this happened late at night. The next morning, it's all hands on deck in our newsroom. How are we gonna divvy this up? What are we gonna do? I made mention that I'm sort of our tragedy reporter. That has come over the years because it's just, we're all good at something, right? Every one of us has a talent. And I've become good at being comforting to someone who's hurting and still let them tell their story. So I'm the one, when something bad happens, we'll send help. So this story broke, and we found out who the boy was. And our job, and we can debate it, I'm happy to if you want to or not, but our job is to make him not just a name in the paper. And I can only do that by going and knocking on the doors of the people who loved him and saying, I'm sorry for what's happened, but I'm here and I want to listen and I want to tell people who Tyler Jarrell really was. So we ran a background check and found that he came from a split family. Mom on one part of town, dad on the other. Again, to cut to the chase here. I thought I was doing the right thing. And I told one of our interns, I said, I want you to go to the dad's house. Because I thought it would be the easier interview. I'll go to the mom. Well, this is a good time for me to tell you that I'm a single mom of a son whose dad wasn't ever in the picture till my boy was old enough to say, look at my boy. So I took what I thought would be the difficult. I sent my intern to the dad's house. Turns out, I was just pulling around the corner to pull up in front of the mom's house. My photographer was driving, my phone rings, and I answered it. It's my intern, and he's like, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. The dad doesn't know. What do I do? So we got through that hurdle, and we dealt with it. The mom politely told me, I'm not ready to talk. I get back to the office. Michael ends up, we deal with it, and it's a long way we dealt with it, but I called the authorities and said, you need to get somebody over to the dad's house. We need to first make sure we had the right dad. What if somehow we got it wrong? And it turns out that the dad hadn't had much to do with it ever. Admitted that to us. I don't really know much about my boy. He lived in a neighborhood that was a troubled neighborhood. The complex where the dad lived, generally it's a well-known complex in the city of Columbus where most everyone who lives there is dealing with some sort of addiction or mental health issue. He never brought Michael into his apartment, so they had this uncomfortable conversation in the hallway. At one point, the dad says, he was a great storyteller or something like that. The dad said he was always writing books about superheroes. Because I've got a book that he wrote when he was like 5. And the dad goes in and brings the book out and gives it to Michael. So Michael comes back to the office. By now it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm the lead writer on the story for tomorrow. We're talking about what we've got. And I said, we're not going to use the dad. Now why would I say that? Because my bias, and I own it, was if that were my boy, and something happens to him, and it's his dad that shows up on the front page of the newspaper the next morning. Heaven help the reporter. Was I right? Of course not. That's why there's more than one person in a newsroom. If you hear nothing else, hear this. We don't do the news. We don't do journalism. We don't write the news in a vacuum. We have conversations that are hard and painful every day. Why are we doing this? Are we doing this the right way? What do we do about this? So we have the conversation. I said, I'm not writing the dad. And all credit to my intern who said, I think that's wrong. And he called me on that. So we had a conversation about it. And you know what? We used the dad. His pain was real. His grief was real. He had a right to it. Now, I didn't lead with the dad, but he was certainly in the story. Did I pay a price for that? Probably, because the mom still hasn't talked to me to this day. But the point is, journalists have feelings and biases, and we have to keep them out of our writing. That's the challenge. Does that make sense to anybody? Does it help you at all when you think about what you're reading? And remember the conversations that we have in the news. I want you to remember that. Reporters are people too. I have a t-shirt that says that. Reporters are people too. So, biases. Everybody, do you need a picture of my cat yet? Are you bored? Or do you want to go? Go ahead.
So how do you compartmentalize? So I currently working for Spectrum News. I'm doing kind of packages of stories for them. I've come across times where I'm reporting on a story and it's something I've experienced. It's either a trauma or it's an emotional topic or something like that. So then how do you compartmentalize? So it'll work where I'll push it aside, and then come the next day or a couple hours later, I'll kind of crack. So how do you separate kind of yourself kind of looking in rather than like connecting to the topic?
I don't think you do.
Okay.
I think, and we've talked about this a lot, again, because I'm internship coordinator, covering the Me Too movement as a woman, and especially as a woman on campus for my young journalists, has presented very unique challenges. And I don't think you do. I think you use that perspective to help make smarter reporting. It's ask smarter questions because it's something you know. Journalists are always going to do a better job writing about things they understand. So if these are things we intrinsically understand, we're going to do a better job. Now, then you look at my answer from a few minutes ago when I said, but make sure that you're not transferring. There's a difference between bringing it as a perspective and an understanding and being an empathetic reporter. And you have a right to get angry as a reporter, but you can't let it cloud what you're doing. You have to just understand